The night my father stood up at my engagement dinner, raised his glass, and said, "No man would ever want her," was the same night I finally stopped trying to earn his love. My name is Ethan Miller. I'm 28 years old, and for as long as I can remember, my father treated me like a mistake that somehow kept living. I grew up in a house where nothing I did was ever enough. If I got good grades, he said it was luck. If I worked hard, he said I was desperate. If I succeeded, he said I probably cheated. And when I failed, he made sure everyone knew it. But the worst part wasn't the criticism. It was the way he talked about my future. Like I didn't deserve one. Especially when it came to love. "You?" He used to laugh. "No man is going to want someone like you." I heard that sentence more times than I could count. At family dinners, at birthdays, even at my college graduation. He would smile like it was a joke, but it never felt like one. For years, I believed him. I believed I wasn't good enough, not smart enough, not attractive enough, not worthy of a stable life or a real partner. So instead of chasing relationships, I focused on one thing, building something he couldn't take away from me. I worked relentlessly. While he mocked me, I studied. While he doubted me, I built. While he laughed at my dreams, I turned them into plans. I started with nothing. A small laptop, late nights, freelance projects no one wanted. I failed more times than I can even remember. But I didn't stop, because every time I heard his voice in my head telling me I wasn't enough, I worked harder. By 25, I had built my first real business. By 27, I had scaled it into something that didn't just pay bills. It created freedom, financial freedom, emotional distance, and finally, independence from him. And then, I met Emily Carter. She didn't see me the way he did. She didn't see a failure. She saw a man who had survived something hard and still chose to be kind. She believed in me, even when I didn't fully believe in myself yet. Emily didn't care about my past. She cared about who I was becoming. And for the first time in my life, I felt like I was finally enough for someone. So when I proposed to her, and she said yes, it felt like I had finally rewritten the story my father had tried to write for me. But my father, he wasn't happy, not even a little. When I told him I was engaged, he didn't congratulate me. He laughed, actually laughed. Then he said something I'll never forget. "Let's see how long that lasts." I should have known he wouldn't stay quiet. I should have known he would try to humiliate me one last time. But I didn't expect him to do it. In front of everyone. The engagement dinner was supposed to be a celebration. Emily's family was there. My extended family was there. Friends. Smiles. Laughter. For a moment, it felt like a normal, happy life. The kind I always wanted. Until my father stood up. He picked up his glass, tapped it twice, and the room slowly went quiet. He smiled. That same smile he used every time he was about to tear me down. "I'd like to make a toast," he said. Everyone looked at him, waiting, expecting something kind, something supportive, something a father should say at his child's engagement. Instead, he looked straight at me, then at Emily, then back at the room, and said, "Honestly, I'm surprised any man would want her." The room froze. No one laughed. No one moved. You could feel the shock in the air. Emily's hand tightened around mine. I felt her breath catch. I saw the confusion in her parents' faces, and I saw something else in the eyes of my relatives. Embarrassment. Not for me, for him. But my father wasn't done. He took a sip of his drink, like what he just said was completely normal. Then he added, "I guess some people just don't know what they're getting into." That was the moment something inside me changed. For years, I stayed quiet. I ignored him. I avoided conflict. I told myself it wasn't worth it. That one day, he would change. But standing there that night, watching the woman I loved being disrespected, hearing him try to humiliate me one last time, I realized something important. He was never going to change. So I had to. I slowly stood up, still holding Emily's hand. My heart was calm. My mind was clear. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of him. The entire room watched me, waiting to see what I would do, what I would say, if I would finally break, or finally stand up for myself. I looked at my father, right into his eyes. and I spoke in a calm, steady voice. "Are you finished?" His smile faded just slightly. He didn't expect me to answer back. Not like this. Not in front of everyone. He shrugged. "Just being honest." I nodded slowly. "Good," I said. "Then I'll be honest too." The room went even quieter. If that was even possible. You could feel the tension building, the moment stretching. Everyone knew something was about to happen. I took a small step forward, still holding Emily's hand. Still calm, still controlled. And then I said the sentence that changed everything. "You might want to check the documents I sent you this morning." My father frowned, confused, annoyed. "What documents?" he asked. I gave a small, quiet smile and said, "You'll understand in a second." And that's when his phone vibrated. He slowly reached into his pocket, pulled it out, looked at the screen, and I watched as the color drained from his face. Because the moment he opened that file, he realized something he never expected. The person he spent his entire life calling worthless was the same person who now controlled everything he thought he owned. And this time, there was no joke left to hide behind. The second my father looked at his phone, I saw it. That exact moment when confidence turns into confusion. His eyebrows pulled together, his lips tightened, his fingers froze on the screen. And then, his eyes started scanning faster, reading, rereading, trying to understand what he was seeing. The room was still completely silent. Everyone could feel it. Something had shifted. Something serious. "What is this?" my father asked. His voice lower now, no longer confident. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't rush. I simply answered, calm and steady. "It's the truth." He looked up at me. There was something in his eyes I had never seen before. Uncertainty. "You need to explain this," he said. For years, he had spoken to me like I owed him explanations, like I needed to justify my existence. But tonight, I was the one in control. So I took a slow breath, and I spoke clearly enough for everyone in that room to hear. 3 years ago, I said, when your business started losing money, you needed investors. He didn't say anything, but his jaw tightened, because he knew exactly what I was talking about. "You remember that company that stepped in?" I continued. "The one that kept your business alive?" A few people at the table started exchanging glances, because they remembered too. My father had bragged about it for months. How he made a smart deal, how he saved everything, how he was still the one in charge. I tilted my head slightly. That company was mine. The words landed like a shockwave. I heard someone drop a fork. Someone else whispered, "Wait, what?" My father's face turned pale. "That's not possible," he said quickly. "I would know." I gave a small, controlled smile. "No," I said. "You wouldn't, because I didn't use my name." Silence. Heavy, thick, uncomfortable. "You see," I continued, "I didn't invest in your business to help you." That line made everyone freeze again. I let it sit for a second. Then I finished the sentence. "I invested because it was a smart opportunity. I wasn't lying. Back then, it was just business. Bold, strategic, calculated. But there was something else too. Something I didn't admit until now. A part of me wanted to prove that I could succeed even in the world he claimed I would fail in. "You've been signing contracts for the last 3 years," I said calmly. "Every agreement, every extension, every loan restructure." I paused. "Every one of them was approved by my company." My father shook his head. No, this is wrong. I would have seen your name somewhere." I stepped a little closer. "You never looked past the first page," I said quietly. "You trusted the title, the branding, the lawyers." I gave a faint, almost sad smile. "You never checked who actually owned the parent company." His hand holding the phone started to shake, because now he understood. You own the parent company?" he asked. I nodded. "Yes." The room erupted into quiet murmurs. Shock, confusion, disbelief. Emily's parents looked at me like they were seeing me for the first time. My relatives looked at my father, waiting for him to respond, to deny it, to fight back, but he couldn't. Because the documents on his phone were real. You said no man would ever want me, I said softly, looking directly at him. But the truth is, I took a breath. I built something you needed to survive. His mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. I didn't do it for revenge, I added. I didn't do it to hurt you. I glanced at Emily, then back at him. I did it because I believed in myself, even when you didn't. That line hit harder than anything else, because it was the one thing he had never allowed me to do growing up. Believe in myself. But there's something else you need to know, I said. And now, my tone shifted slightly. Not angry, not aggressive, but firm. Final. The agreement you signed last year, I continued, has a clause. His eyes snapped back to the screen, scrolling, searching, finding it. I watched as his face changed again, from shock to fear. No, he whispered. Yes, I said quietly. If the company fails to meet its next financial obligation, I paused just long enough for everyone to feel it. Ownership transfers completely. Someone in the room gasped. And based on the latest report you sent last week, I added, still calm, still steady. You're not going to make that payment. The silence that followed was louder than anything he had said earlier, because now everyone understood. The man who just stood up and humiliated his own child in public was standing on the edge of losing everything to the same child he spent years calling worthless. My father slowly lowered his phone, his hands trembling, his eyes unfocused. You're going to take everything from me? He asked. For the first time in my life, his voice sounded small. I looked at him for a long moment. Then I said something he never expected to hear from me. That depends on you. The room held its breath, because now, this wasn't just about money. This was about something deeper, something personal. My father swallowed hard. What do you want? He asked. I didn't answer right away. I looked around the room, at the people who had watched me grow up, at the people who had heard him mock me for years, at Emily, who squeezed my hand gently. And then I looked back at him. I want respect, I said. Not fake, not for show, real respect. His eyes filled with something between regret and disbelief. And I want one more thing, I added. He nodded slowly. Anything. I took a step closer, close enough that only he could really feel the weight of my words. You're going to apologize, I said quietly. Not just to me. I glanced at Emily. To her. The man who had spent 28 years refusing to admit he was wrong was now standing in front of a room full of people with no power left to hide behind. And for the first time in his life, he had a choice. Keep his pride and lose everything, or finally admit the truth and face what he had done. I held his gaze, waiting, calm, unmoved, because this time, I wasn't the one being judged. He was. My father stood there, frozen. For 28 years, I had watched him control every room he walked into. He was always the loudest voice, the final word, the man no one challenged. But tonight, that power was gone. The entire room was watching him now, waiting. For the first time in his life, he had to answer for what he said. He swallowed. His hand tightened around the glass he was holding, like it was the only thing keeping him steady. Then he looked at me, really looked at me. Not like a problem, not like a failure, but like someone he didn't understand anymore. He started, then stopped, because saying sorry was never something he practiced. The silence stretched. Every second felt heavier. Emily's hand gently squeezed mine again. A quiet reminder. I wasn't alone anymore. My father took a slow breath. Then he turned toward Emily. His shoulders dropped slightly, like something inside him was finally breaking. I was wrong, he said. The words sounded strange coming from him. Unfamiliar. Like a language he never spoke before. He cleared his throat. I shouldn't have said that, he continued. His voice lower now, less sharp. It was disrespectful. And it was cruel. Emily didn't say anything. She just looked at him, calm but firm. Then he turned back to me. And this part was harder for him. I could see it. Years of ego, years of pride, years of thinking he was always right. All of it was standing in his way. He paused again. His voice shook slightly. I shouldn't have treated you the way I did. Those words hit deeper than anything else he had said, because they weren't about tonight. They were about everything. Every insult, every laugh, every moment he made me feel small. The room was completely silent again. No one moved. No one interrupted. Everyone understood how big this moment was. I thought, he continued slowly, I thought pushing you would make you stronger. He looked down for a second, but I went too far. I listened, calm, still, steady, because this wasn't about revenge anymore. This was about truth. I didn't realize, he said quietly, how much damage I was doing. That was the closest thing to honesty I had ever heard from him. I nodded once, not forgiving, not rejecting, just acknowledging. And now? I asked him. Simple. Direct. He looked back up at me, and for the first time in my life, I saw fear in his eyes, but also something else. Respect. Now I understand, he said. The room let out a breath it didn't even realize it was holding. I glanced at Emily. She gave me a small nod. She didn't need anything more. She wasn't here for revenge. She was here for peace. But there was still one thing left. The payment. My father said carefully, his voice cautious now. If I can't make it, you'll take the company. I didn't answer right away, because that decision was bigger than money, bigger than business. It was about everything he had built his identity around. For years, he measured his worth through control, through success, through the belief that he was always above me. And now, everything had flipped. I took a slow breath. Then I said something no one in that room expected. I'm not going to take your company. The reaction was immediate. Confusion. Hook. Disbelief. My father blinked. What? He asked. I'm not here to destroy you, I said calmly. I'm here to change something. He stared at me, trying to understand. I built my life without your approval, I continued. I built success without your support. I paused. And I'm going to keep building, with or without you in my life. Those words were the boundary I never had before. Clear, strong, final. But the company? He asked again. I nodded slightly. I'll restructure the agreement, I said. You keep your business. His eyes widened. But, I added, my voice firm now, there are conditions. The room leaned in again, because now, this was about more than money. You will treat me with respect, I said. You will treat Emily with respect. I paused. And if we ever have children, I looked directly at him. You will never speak to them the way you spoke to me. His face changed again. This time, softer, more human. He nodded slowly. I understand, he said. And if that line is ever crossed, I added quietly, I won't warn you twice. He nodded again, faster this time. Because now, he knew I meant it. The power dynamic had changed, completely. Not because I took something from him, but because I finally stood up for myself. I reached into my pocket, pulled out a small envelope, and placed it on the table in front of him. What's this? He asked. The new agreement, I said, already signed on my side. His hands shook slightly as he opened it, reading, processing, realizing that this time, the future of his life depended on how he treated me. He looked up again, his eyes softer now, quieter. Thank you, he said. I nodded once. Not for him, but for me, for the person I had become, because this moment wasn't about winning. It was about breaking a cycle, and finally, choosing a different ending. The dinner didn't end the way it started. The laughter never came back, but something else did. Truth. People started talking again, slowly, not loud, not cheerful, but real. Because what just happened at that table, it changed how everyone saw us. Him and me. My father didn't sit back down right away. He stayed standing there for a few seconds longer, holding the new agreement in his hands like it weighed more than anything he had ever signed. Because this time, it wasn't just business. It was personal. When he finally sat down, he didn't look at me. He didn't look at anyone. He just stared at the table, quiet, humbled. That was a version of him I had never seen before. And honestly, I didn't know how to feel about it. For years, I imagined a moment like this. A moment where he would finally realize what he had done, where he would finally understand my worth, where he would finally be the one sitting in silence instead of me. But standing there that night, I didn't feel powerful. I didn't feel victorious. I felt free. Free from needing his approval. Free from needing him to understand me. Free from trying to prove something I had already proven to myself. Emily gently leaned into me. "Are you okay?" she whispered. I looked at her, really looked at her. At the woman who stood by me when I had nothing. The woman who believed in me when I barely believed in myself. And I smiled. "I am now," I said quietly. Across the table, Emily's parents were watching everything, not with judgment, but with respect. A kind of respect I had never received from my own father growing up. Her father gave me a small nod, the kind of nod that said, "You handled that like a man." That meant more to me than anything my own father had ever said. The rest of the dinner was quiet. Conversations were softer, careful, like everyone was adjusting to a new reality. My father didn't speak much, but when he did, his tone had changed. No sarcasm, no mocking, no sharp edges, just restraint. And maybe, just maybe, a little bit of awareness. After dinner, people started leaving one by one. Hugs, handshakes, soft goodbyes. Everyone pretending like the night was normal, even though we all knew it wasn't. As Emily and I stepped outside, the night air felt different, cooler, lighter, like something heavy had finally been lifted off my chest. We walked to the car slowly, hand in hand. No rush, no pressure, just peace. "You didn't have to do all that," Emily said softly. I looked at her. "I didn't do it for him," I replied. "I did it for us." She smiled, and that smile, that calm, warm, proud smile, was worth every difficult moment I had lived through to get here. We were about to get into the car when I heard footsteps behind me. "Ethan, wait." I turned around. It was my father. For a second, time felt like it paused, because this was new. He never followed me before. He never came after me. He stopped a few feet away, not too close, not too far, almost like he didn't know what distance he was allowed to stand at anymore.